China has the largest population in the world, with over 1.5 billion inhabitants. The country is also home to a large Muslim population of over 22 million people. Islam was introduced in China by envoys from the Middle East, who traveled to meet Emperor Gaozong of the Tang dynasty in the 7th century. These people lived peacefully in China until the 18th century, when ties between them and the Chinese government started loosening. At this time, many revolts were staged in opposition to the influx of migrants who were coming from the overpopulated regions of China to regions that had not been under direct Chinese control. The Muslims were blamed for this, and it brought an end to the official accommodation for them by the Chinese government. Tensions keep rising in China up to date, and recent reports also show that the Islamophobia that has always been in the West is gaining ground in China too, and world leaders are just being mute on the situation. There is a group of Muslims in China, known as the Uyghurs, who are regarded as violent extremists for practicing their religion. More than 1 million Uyghurs are arbitrarily detained in China's Xinjiang region as we speak. Today, we shall be looking at the reasons for the erasure of Muslims in China and how the Chinese government is handling the problem. Before we begin, hit the like button and subscribe to the new tourist channel. Muslim prisoners in detention centers and re-education camps are facing Islamophobic practices and fed pork forcefully in China. Watch the whole story carefully. After the founding of the People's Republic of China in the 1940s, ethnographers and anthropologists divided the people who lived within the borders of the new state into 56 ethnic groups, based on criteria such as shared language, territory, history, and traditions. Of these 56 ethnic groups, 10 are now recognized as Muslim minorities. They include the Hui, Uyghur, Kazakh, Dongxiang, Kyrgyz, Salar, Tajik, Uzbek, Bonan, and Tatar. From the time these communities were installed till 1966, everything went on smoothly. However, during the chaotic period of the Cultural Revolution in China between 1966 and 1969, mosques were shattered, copies of Korans were destroyed, Muslims were prohibited from going on a religious pilgrimage, and expressions of all religious beliefs were banned by communists' Red Guards. What makes the Chinese government see the Muslims as a threat? When the Mongol Yuan dynasty came to power in the 13th century, Muslims started coming to China in large numbers, and some even served as administrators for new rulers, who were descendants of Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire. History often repeats itself, but what is unfolding today in China regarding its Muslim minority is in fact more alarming than the dynamics of the past. In early 2015, Chinese authorities forced Turkic Muslim imams to dance in the streets while chanting state propaganda and to take an oath, swearing not to teach religion to children. So, why are the Chinese doing this to the Uyghurs? There are two easy, but false, or at best incomplete answers. The first is that the CCP does not like religion in general. This is true, but does not explain why the persecution of Uyghurs has escalated to the present dramatic figures in recent years. The CCP always disliked religion. Why does it crack down on the Uyghurs on such a massive scale now? The second answer is that the CCP is afraid of Uyghur separatism and terrorism. This is, of course, the CCP's own party line. And the CCP spares no effort to sell this to international media and governments. Although results are increasingly disappointing for the CCP, some media occasionally still repeat this explanation. The mass detention of Muslims and life in re-education camps. The Chinese government has arbitrarily detained more than 1 million Muslims in re-education camps since 2017. Most of the people who have been detained are Uyghur, a predominantly Turkic-speaking ethnic group that is located in the northern part of Xinjiang. The United States and other foreign governments have described China's actions against Muslims as genocide, while the United Nations Human Rights Office said that the violations could constitute crimes against humanity. Chinese officials describe the camps where these people are retained as vocational education and training centers, while activists refer to them as concentration camps. About 11 million Uyghurs living out of these camps have continued to suffer from a decades-long crackdown by Chinese authorities. It is even more saddening to note that most people who were detained in these camps were never charged with crimes and had no legal avenues to challenge their detentions. Their crime is that they're Muslim. Some human rights groups also add that many Uyghurs have been labeled as extremists for simply practicing their religion. Information on what happens in the camps is limited, but many detainees who have fled China often describe their past life as an agonizing one. The UN report affirms previous findings by international journalists, human rights groups, and researchers. From their findings, Muslims detained in China were forced to pledge loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party, dubbed CCEP, and renounce Islam, as well as sing praises for communism and learn Mandarin. Some were forced to sing 3 songs praising the CCP before they were given any meal. They're also forced to eat pork, which is against the laws of Islam. Many Uyghur parents living outside of China face a difficult choice of either returning home to be with their children and risk detention, or staying abroad, separated from their families and unable to contact them. The problem of China trying to erase Muslims in her territory is more complicated because the Chinese government often denies allegations of human rights abuses in the Xinjiang area, where Chinese policemen are everywhere looking for defaulters or reporters to crack down on. China's foreign ministry spokesman has often made speeches saying that the crackdown in Xinjiang is to prevent terrorism and root out Islamic extremism, and he also describes detention as a tool for re-educating inmates in its fight against terrorism. If you are enjoying this video, then give it a like before we continue. Also, subscribe to The New Tourist to join our community of touristers. Torture, ill treatment, and erasure of Muslim cultures and values. Since 2018, countless deaths have been recorded in detention camps in China, and this indicates how slowly the Chinese government is wiping away Muslims present in the country. Uyghurs are picked up at night and sent to re-education camps or sentenced so that they're untraceable. Most of the deaths recorded are a result of illnesses, including mental disabilities, that developed in camps and were not properly treated. Still, Chinese authorities rarely acknowledge these deaths. In 2018, Human Rights Watch reported that in Xinjiang, police detention facility staff beat detainees, hung them from ceilings and walls, deprived them of sleep forcefully, and at times subjected them to prolonged shackling. Other former detainees reported having been strapped on metal chairs known as tiger chairs during police interrogations. Although the Chinese government uses mass surveillance throughout the country, its monitoring and tracking of Muslims, particularly the Uyghurs, is more invasive in Xinjiang. Xinjiang is full of Chinese spies who are looming around searching for Uyghur defaulters or reporters who want to cover the atrocities the Chinese government is perpetuating there. Another facet of this mass surveillance of Muslims in China is the extensive and compulsory collection of their biometric data. Authorities collect DNA samples, fingerprints, iris scans, and blood types from all Xinjiang residents between the ages of 12 and 65, through a medical program known as Physicals for All. This data is entered into searchable databases, and these people can be traced and executed at any time. The main reason for the creation of detention camps in China, as you are already watching, is to wipe out Muslims and their culture. Detainees are forced to learn Chinese and are forbidden from speaking any other language. Government platforms in China state that the purpose of the camps is to wash brains and cleanse hearts. Speaking or writing the Uyghur language is discouraged, and Chinese authorities have banned the use of Uyghur and Kazakh didactic materials and regard employees still using them as being unpatriotic or two-sided persons. This charge has resulted in the detention of hundreds of Turkic Muslim public figures over the years. The Chinese government's restrictions on the practice of Islam in Xinjiang are loud-sounding. As we speak, the common Arabic greeting as Salam Alaikum, meaning peace be unto you, is restricted from public places in some parts of China like markets, streets, and schools. Xinjiang authorities have also imposed bans on the wearing of headscarves and other Islam-related items. They even consider private religious acts such as regular prayer or fasting for Ramadan as signs of extremism. The authorities require that the use of halal be restricted only to certain food products like meat, dairy, and edible oils, banning such labels for other purposes. There have been reports of Chinese officials pressurizing Muslims to drink alcohol, violate their religious beliefs, and display elements of traditional Chinese culture during lunar celebrations at the start of the year. Turkic Muslim imams who are not registered with the CCP risk mistreatment and even imprisonment as a result of their positions. Human Rights Watch also has it that Chinese authorities have destroyed numerous cemeteries, where generations of Muslim people were buried, which many people see as an attempt to disconnect these Muslims from their ancestors and history. Many mosques in China have also been brought down or transformed so they no longer resemble mosques. The grave of a former prominent Uyghur poet called Lutpolamutelen was changed into a park in 1945. It is today known as Happiness Park, filled with children's rides and toys. The Chinese government highly encourages marriages between Muslim men and Chinese women and their natives in a bid to let them forget their religion. Also, Chinese men were sent to live with Uyghur families. Some of the Uyghur women who found this uncomfortable and unbearable have been committing it since they can't take it anymore. China's maltreatment of Uyghur Muslims exposed. China has been witnessing a humanitarian crisis for so many years now, but it's not often spoken about by many people. However, world leaders are not doing anything about it because somehow they're benefiting from China. More than 1 million Uyghur and other Muslim minorities are forcefully held in mass detention camps in the Xinjiang province, where they face countless human rights abuses ranging from forced labor, coerced sterilization, and a wide alteration of their cultural and religious values. According to the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, about 16,000 mosques have been damaged and 8,450 others entirely wiped out in China. Over the recent months, more and more allegations and evidence have come to light of the poor treatment of Uyghur Muslims in China, including mass incarcerations, abuse, and other harsh treatments that are denied by Beijing. It is important to note that, while some of these alleged crimes are hidden by the fact that they are perpetrated behind closed doors, and therefore are difficult to verify, the Chinese Communist Party may have made a mistake that adds to the increasingly clear picture of how it is treating Muslims by publicly demolishing their mosques. Adverse views and attitudes towards Muslims in China are widespread, and some Muslim communities in China face legal restrictions on their ability to practice. Anti-Muslimism attitudes in China have been tied to both narratives regarding historical conflicts between the Chinese and Muslim polities, as well as contemporary rhetoric related to terrorism in and out of China. Many Muslim children in China have been left parentless due to the massive incarcerations. Other measures are being put in place to wipe out Muslims in China. What you have just watched could still be deeply examined, but we have given you the overview. The Chinese Communist Party is trying to create a united China. To do so, they want to turn every one of their citizens into communist robots. They have even succeeded to brainwash most Chinese people to think that they all must be one people, and that's why they're wiping out Muslims. The events in China are sad to watch or learn about. The Uyghurs are persecuted because the strong revival of Islam among them scared the regime. The CCP was, and is, afraid that the Muslim revival may expand to other non-Uyghur Muslim groups in China and join forces with a revival of religion in general that may one day overcome the CCP's rule. The logical conclusion is that, although no persecution is ever purely religious, the Uyghurs are indeed victims of religious persecution. President Xi Jinping's policy of increasing crackdown on religion in general was the final factor that created the present situation. What are your thoughts after watching this video? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you know anything about this atrocity that the Chinese government is committing, then add it in the comments. Like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the New Tourist channel to join our community. Thank you for watching, and see you in our next video.